Why life is not a race. The morning you wake up in a world still asleep. One morning, something shifts. Not out there in the world, but within you. You look around, and nothing has changed. The same city noise, the same deadlines, the same cycle of work, pay, spend, repeat. But somehow, everything feels different. It's as if a fog you didn't know was there has quietly lifted. You see the chase, the endless game, the treadmill disguised as a ladder. And then the question arises, if this is success, why do I feel so empty? Awakening begins not with answers, but with doubt. Alanwatts believed that awakening is not about finding truth, but recognizing illusion. You begin to notice people chasing status like dogs chasing cars, without asking why. Lives centered around performance, appearances, approval. A collective hypnosis. More, faster, bigger, now. Since childhood, we've been programmed. Get good grades, get the degree, get the job, get the money, get the life. But no one tells you what to do when you get all of that and still feel lost. Running without knowing why. Maybe you're at the edge of something profound, a different kind of awakening, not dramatic, not spiritual in the religious sense, but deeply real. Life is not a project to complete. It's a dance to feel, a song to hear, a sunset to witness. And yet, this realization brings discomfort. You lose the drive to keep running, but the race doesn't stop. You're awake, but the world around you is still asleep. You see through the illusion, but you're still inside it. The myth of success. In modern life, success is sold to us as accumulation, reputation, busy calendars, bigger everything. But as Alanwatts reminds us, man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. We spend years climbing a ladder, only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. You begin to feel the emptiness of ambition without meaning. You begin to question, is this really what life is for? Is there something more than this endless proving? What does it mean to wake up? Waking up isn't about quitting your job or renouncing all things. It's about changing how you see. It's about presence, awareness. It's about living without being trapped by the roles you play. You can still work, still earn, still achieve, but you no longer mistake the map for the territory. You no longer mistake the menu for the meal. You are no longer hypnotized by the game. And here's the paradox. Only when you stop trying to win life do you truly begin to live it. Only when you stop chasing freedom do you discover it's already yours. But if you stop chasing, what then? If you step out of the race, where does that leave you? How do you live awake when the world demands you stay asleep? You are not this body. You are not your name, your job, or the roles you play. You are the awareness behind all of it. Alan Watts. Every era has its strange voices, those who speak softly while the world screams. In the mid-20th century, while the West was marching toward industrial power, consumerism, and Cold Wars, one man stood up and said, "The world is asleep." That man was Alan Watts, philosopher, storyteller, spiritual translator, who helped millions in the West begin to understand the ancient wisdom of the East through a lens of poetic simplicity and playful brilliance. Who was Alan Watts? Born in 1915 in England and passing in 73 in California, Watts was not just a thinker, he was a bridge. A former Anglican priest trained in theology who became a lifelong explorer of Zen Buddhism, Taoism, Hindu Vedanta, and mystical experience. Watts could take the most elusive spiritual truths and render them beautifully simple. He didn't speak at his audience. He invited you to question the foundations of your lives. The voice that made you stop and listen. Unlike dry scholars, Alan Watts had a storyteller's soul. With a hypnotic British accent and a rhythm that felt like jazz, he didn't lecture. He invited you to see through the veil of modern life, the veil of productivity, the illusion of identity, the mythology of success. He reminded us, the desire for control is what keeps us trapped, and then gently dismantled the biggest illusions, that the self is a fixed identity, that wealth brings happiness, that we are separate from nature, from each other, from the universe. He said, you don't have to achieve anything to be worthy. You don't need to fix yourself, you only need to see you're already whole. You don't need to force change. Observe and change will come. He wasn't pushing a new religion. He was inviting us home to ourselves. A voice of sanity in the noise. Today, in a world ruled by algorithms, branding, dopamine loops, and endless digital noise, Alan Watts feels like a quiet candle in a blackout. Young people find him when anxiety drowns ambition. Middle-aged listeners turn to him to remember what truly matters. He's not a guru, he is a mirror. He didn't offer rules, he offered clarity. Are you sure, he seemed to ask, you need to go somewhere just to be alive? And from these soft, curious questions, something inside begins to stir. A shift, a breath, a whisper. Maybe this isn't the life I want to escape. Maybe I've just forgotten how to live it. But awakening is rarely convenient, because when you start to see through the illusion, you also begin to feel how asleep the world still is. You're awake. You see clearly. You understand now that life is not a straight line with success at the end. You no longer chase money, titles, or validation from others. But then, rent is still due at the end of the month. Bills still come. Your fridge still needs food. And society, the great machine still asleep, keeps spinning based on rules you no longer believe in. This is the crisis point, the moment when inner awakening collides with outer reality. You know deep down you don't need much to live, but the world you live in says that's not enough. You've stopped believing that your value lies in status, but the world still rewards resumes, job titles, and social metrics. You're no longer afraid of being poor, but now you're actually short on cash. You find yourself standing between two worlds, one that you no longer belong to, and one you haven't yet learned how to live in. You're stuck. You don't have the motivation to keep playing the old game, but you don't yet have the tools to survive the new way.
You're not willing to sell your soul for a paycheck anymore, but you haven't yet figured out how to earn without losing yourself. You begin to wonder, was I wrong to step off the treadmill? Is awakening too high a price to pay? Why is it harder to live now that I see more clearly? And then you look around. The people who are still asleep seem okay. They hustle, they chase, they stress, but their bank accounts are full. They have homes, they have cars. They don't ask deep questions. They don't lose sleep over the meaning of it all. They live inside the illusion, and the illusion pays well. Meanwhile, you, who have seen through it, are struggling. Awakening, it turns out, isn't a burst of light. It's a twilight zone. You see more clearly, but you don't yet know how to walk fully in either direction. Alanwatts said that spiritual awakening is like stepping off the stage and realizing it was all just a performance. The problem? The audience still thinks the play is real. And you can't scream at the crowd, it's all an act. You can only walk forward with clarity and presence. So this is the turning point. When you realize awakening doesn't necessarily lead to an easier life, it does lead to a more authentic one. But how do you live truthfully in a world built on pretending? The reaction. How society responds when you stop playing the game. When you wake up, something strange happens. You start to move differently, speak differently, think differently. Not louder, not more confident, not yet, but slower, quieter, as if you're no longer in a rush, because you're no longer chasing what they're chasing. And the world, it notices. At first, people may not say anything. They just tilt their heads when you no longer care about the latest phone, the latest gossip, the latest promotion. You stop performing. And in a society built on performance, that makes people uncomfortable. Because when you're not chasing, you become a mirror to those who are. And mirrors, especially honest ones, are rarely welcome. You'll hear things like, "Are you okay? Why aren't you more ambitious? You're wasting your potential." But you're not broken. You're just not hypnotized anymore. And that makes you stand out, not like a star, but like a crack in the illusion. People start to project onto you. Some will admire you silently, but never say it. Some will envy your peace, but pretend to pity your lack of success. Some will dismiss you, mock you, or even resent you for daring to step off the treadmill they've chained themselves to. You're no longer easy to categorize. You're no longer playing the same game. And society is not built to support people who step outside the game. Not yet. Because society, as it stands, thrives on conformity. It rewards roles, not presence. It pays for performance, not authenticity. So when you choose to live honestly, to work in a way that honors your soul, to speak without pretense, to refuse the race, you might not be rewarded at first. In fact, You might be ignored. But that's part of the transition. Alan Watts said, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago." And that's terrifying to a world that depends on predictable roles. So the backlash comes. The discomfort of family members who can't understand your change. The disapproval of colleagues who think you've checked out. The loneliness of realizing that many friendships were built on shared illusions, not shared truth. But that's okay, because what you're going through isn't regression, it's realignment. The old skin is falling off, and while the new one hasn't hardened yet, you are growing into someone who can live with depth, not just surface. This part of the journey is tender, raw, full of doubt and silence and wondering if you've made a mistake. But you haven't. You're not failing, you're healing. And as you heal, something begins to shift, not just in you, but around you. New people show up, new opportunities, not driven by competition, but by resonance, not by neediness, but by truth. It's slow, it's subtle, but it's real. And so here you are. You've walked through the fog of illusion. You've questioned everything you were taught to believe. You've lost old identities, old dreams, old definitions of success. You've struggled, you've doubted, you've been misunderstood, and yet you've never felt more you. This awakening isn't a destination, it's a way of seeing, a way of moving, a way of being in the world but not consumed by it. You've discovered that life is not a competition, not a race, not a ladder to climb. It's a dance, a song, a breath. You've learned to work without worshiping work, to earn without losing yourself in the earning, to love without controlling, to rest without guilt. You've come home to what was always here, this moment, this breath, this being. You've remembered that your worth was never in your resume, never in your productivity, never in how fast you ran or how high you climbed. Your worth was in your awareness, your presence, your ability to stop and feel it all. And now, the final truth. You don't have to escape society. You don't have to fight the system. You simply have to stop believing in the illusion that you are separate from life. You can pay your bills and remain free. You can play the game without being played. You can show up, speak, share, build, create, all from a place of depth, not desperation. You are not here to prove your value. You are here to live it, not someday, not once you reach a goal, now. And when the doubt returns, and it will, remember, even birds with no bank accounts are fed. Even flowers with no followers are dressed in beauty. And you are part of that same intelligence, that same flow, that same miracle. So take heart, trust the rhythm, live the questions, breathe into the silence, and keep showing up with love. Because maybe the point was never to win the race. Maybe it was to realize there never was one. But is that really the end of the story? Or is it just the beginning?